We're so pleased to have Sarah here. Please welcome Sarah.
Thank you. Thanks. It's such a huge honor to be able to show this work here. So thank you to everybody who's made that happen. Yeah, so this is a gallery talk, but I do have some slides as a way of kind of giving a little bit of background and working up to how I happened upon this body of work. This, I think, is the only photograph I'm going to show that is not my own. This is a photograph from Versailles, and I can trace my interest in interior space back to being a kid, and for some reason, my favorite places were the period rooms in museums. So, every time I would go to a museum, I'd make a beeline for those rooms and kind of imagine all the royal dramas that might have played out. So they were always like sparks to my imagination, interiors. And in my own house, which this is not, I was constantly rearranging the furniture, I think as a way to keep things new, but also to exert some control at a time in your life when not much is in your control, but I think that's still what we tend to do with our homes to this day. And this is an early photograph of mine from high school, actually. And so I can trace this love of little sofas back this far. This is a portrait of my sister and her lizard that's on the back. But I know for a fact I was more interested in the sofa than the portrait aspect of this picture. And early on in my artwork, I worked in other media, and I would create these objects like this piano couch to photograph. And I was really interested, again, in the sofa, but almost how it appears to have two functions, a piano and a couch, but you can't sit on it because of the piano keys, and you can't play it because it's actually a couch. So I was sort of interested in sort of the surrealist aspects of that. This is a very early digital collage, and I worked in that way to get access to things I couldn't photograph, like leopards, and create that space. This is a monoprint. This is like the Little Red Couch series here in all different media. And lastly, this is a fabric collage I made. And one of the things that was a direct inspiration for this, but kind of all these things I've shown, was a recurring dream I had of being in a huge pink room with a maze of little red sofas, sort of being chased through it. So this is kind of a direct representation of that. And then I also made straight photographs. But I realized early on with the photographs that while I considered them constructed fictions, not like all these other pieces that I was making, that viewers weren't sure whether they were being presented with reality or not. And I found that they were sort of drawn in by the familiarity and the home-likeness of the scene, only to find that things weren't quite right or they were questionable. Was the bed being taken apart or put back together? Are people moving? What is the story behind it? And this effect of the simultaneously familiar and strange is how Freud describes the phenomenon of the uncanny. So that's been something I've thought about all along. He even, the German word, and I'm going to murder its pronunciation, but it's unheimlich, which is unhomelike for uncanny. And certain things can trigger this uncanny feeling, and he talks about like destabilized oppositions. So, the real and the imagined, right? This is a real place that we're seeing directly, but the view through the window almost looks like a dream or a painting. It's actually a window view of this snowy scene. And the animate and inanimate, it's a sofa sitting there, but it has these animal feet with the fur throw over it. Here's some more fur on the wall here, animate and inanimate. This cat is just chilling in this space. And absence and presence. So there have not been people in my photographs for quite some time. Maybe back to the portrait of my sister. But they're about people, obviously, and the choices we make and the things that we surround ourselves with. And even kind of a sense that somebody might have just walked out of the frame or is about to return to this space. This, the framed piece is a little sort of, again, back to Versailles, this idealized interior hanging over this tiny little replica of that kind of period furniture. And here, you know, there's a towel protecting it from the pets. And, you know, there's also still pet hair all over the sofa as well as the towel. And also this mix of time periods and styles. So this is a very modern home with, again, sort of the 18th century replica furniture. But in this one, I don't know if you can see detail enough. There's like this condensation on the window coming in. And I started thinking more about, you know, the home is to protect us from the weather and the elements. It's supposed to be this safe haven. And yet, you know, we're looking out to the forest, the condensation is coming in, or here a blizzard has just happened and it's kind of blocking the view. I started looking at windows a lot, which still continues in a lot of this work, but how windows can frame these coveted views when it's beautiful outside. Same here, this beautiful mountainous landscape. Or we use paintings as substitutes for windows. I sort of love this, looks like the deer sort of escaped from the painting out onto the sofa. And this is actually an aquarium set in the wall. So not a window, not a painting, but still bringing natural elements in. And these pictures that I've been showing, including this, where there's sort of a confusion of the inside and outside, became the basis for my first book, Second Nature. And there's copies of both books up front. And, you know, just as I sort of had in my bio, I was really thinking about the home as this refuge from the outside world, but also a recreation of it in this work. So certain surfaces, you know, stones, wood, trees. This is, you know, almost like a patio pattern, but on a plush carpet. And this actually became the cover of the book. And one of the main questions I got, and I talked to a lot of people Thursday night about where I find these places. And I'm from Boston, as you know, so a lot of these are New England, not exclusively. I feel like they have a New England feel to them. But this is one of the good stories of, it was a good friend of mine who was house sitting for a family in Rhode Island, who gave her permission to let me in and photograph there. But their name was the Strange Kennedys, like with a hyphen. And so, but Kennedy was really the Kennedys, so they were the Strange Kennedys. Anyway, I love that. You can't make this stuff up. So anyway, you know, this repurposed canoe as the coffee table, you know, again, the view through the window and just bringing the plants in as pattern and house plants. And sort of the jungle-themed, immersive environment. These are all jungle leaves all over the upholstery and wallpaper. Or forest, actually being in the forest and, you know, making the house right from it. Or being in your basement bar in Maine, but imagining sailing to someplace warm and tropical. And throughout this work, I had been, you know, obviously specifically looking for representations of wildlife and animals as well. And I really started to think about pets themselves. And, you know, as I say, like the repercussions of living with animals. that they have this peculiar status as both creatures with predator-prey instincts. Here this cat in front of the fire is lying on, her ancient ancestor on the carpet. But they're family members and creatures of comfort. So there's no way she's going out in that snow. This is her environment. And this is another cat. This is another story. These were actually good friends of mine, and this is taken in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. But I made it a while ago, and I was showing it during a talk, and I just kind of said, oh, these people love white so much that they got a white cat. And then I told them that I had said that, and they were like, well, the opposite is what is true. We adopted the cat, and then we decorated the room for her. So it's I should not be making things up. Truth is stranger than fiction. And then, I turned my eyes to, the pets themselves, but also these portraits. And this began an interest kind of organically of thinking about the kinds of things we hang on our walls. In this case, it's, we memorialize our pets or honor them in this portrait here. These are all paintings of one dog named Earl, who some of us know. And then, I was obsessed with the animal portraits, but I started noticing other portraits. So here's the dog and a picture of Bob Dylan, where he looks much like the curly-headed dog. And I started to think about, we put celebrities on our walls. Is that to kind of make a connection to taste and style and express that? Or family, obviously. This is an old picture of these sisters whose room that was. And this is actually the person's ancestor, and also some important historical figures. So I started thinking, it's both a family connection, but some of it seems to be patriotism or interest in history. This is hanging there, and, this culturally appropriated icon sort of fraught the Native American on, and I have some details. I mean, you can, I think, hopefully see this if you're looking at the photograph itself, but, the fact that it's hanging on this cowboy-themed wallpaper was pretty ironic to me. This one's over there, and this is the Swedish royal family. So again, is it the family heritage? They also look like celebrities in that. Here's Napoleon, of course, with a detail of him, and I love the juxtaposition with the pillow of this leopard lady within the room with all the books. And of course, George, who's over there, of course hung over the double bed. So whatever that's about. And this picture's back there too, and that's when I started noticing, again, expanding beyond the portraits. What are these other objects that we collect and display? There are detail here, old VHS tapes and books on the presidents and the Cold War. Is this somebody who truly studies this or is trying to appear educated? Here's this guy is over there as well. Sort of an anonymous wounded person in the photograph on the wall, but the carpet is an Afghani war rug, and I do have, and again, I think you can see in the photograph, but with a low res JPEG or whatever I'm showing, it's hard to see. And this became actually an issue when I was thinking about making the book. Book is sort of letter size, and I didn't know that people would read these little details, so I have pages filled with things like this. But these, I don't know if anybody's heard of these. They started to be made during the first Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. And Afghani women still make them, but they're very much now for a Western tourist trade, but with, you know, the grenades and the machine guns. And this is an old US map. I have a little detail here, sort of tracking westward expansion. And of course, like, this is a very grand New England estate where this is. To the right of the fireplace is a hidden spiral staircase that would be like for the servants, because God forbid you see the servants walking up the stairs. And so this is just to say that, you know, issues of class are always in my work. They're about who gets to collect these things, who displays these things, and sort of the privilege and power behind that. This is kind of, again, I have a detail, but this chair is upholstered with this fabric celebrating Paul Revere's ride and little icons in Boston. So again, it's like, what are the stories that we tell and who is telling these and why? This wallpaper in the stairwell is actually a little Southern plantation pattern. This person had family in World War II. This is a Tuskegee Airmen scene hanging there. Lots of World War II memorabilia. This person also had a connection with family, and this is a replica of the USS Missouri, and that is a real parrot. People often think he's stuffed sitting there, but again, with my animal thing, he's alive. No, I don't think so.
In the war. Yeah, it was in the war, it was not. Okay.
Yeah, but my knowledge is gonna stop there about it.
And that's a stuffed parrot, you said?
No, that's a real parrot.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yes. And I mention that because I think it's funny that this parrot is flying around this room, and also that it's difficult to photograph animals. A lot of times my exposures are really long, so the animals do become a challenge. And there's also a lot of art historical references. Again, you know, is that perhaps, you know, a professor's house or an interest? The pattern on the curtain is the Barberini ivory. And this one that's hanging over there, this is the horse of Selene from the Parthenon that this guy got. I mean, this is not the one from the Parthenon, but this is the replica that he has in his kitchen.
It's a sculpture.
Yes, yes. And of course, you know, I'm pointing out all the details, and all of these are actually titled after, you know, the historical reference, but for me, it's obviously the context. You know, what is this disorienting kitchen space, you know, with the closer on the TV at that moment. This outside is a miniature Stonehenge, of course, as one would have in their garden. And this piece is in the show, all these you know, ancient artifacts, and repurposed. I hope you can see in the print that the mummy case is actually holding CDs. And you know, there are details that, you know, even my high-res big photos can't show, but I did love the detail that all these are heavy metal CDs, particularly in the mummy case. I found all these lamps. These matching lamps are the Santa Maria. So again, these sort of fraught things that have been around, right, for generations, and sometimes we don't even examine that, right? Like, this was a friend of mine's house, and, you know, her parents had these, and she just didn't see them anymore. This is an Alamo nightlight. So this actually is my Texas picture with the saloon doors on the bathroom. Hello, hello. And the Eiffel Tower. And some of these, these are almost souvenirs, right? And so are they remembering keepsakes of a family vacation? Are they to kind of express this interest in other places or this worldliness and sophistication? But all these books on Paris with the light up Eiffel Towers. And the Pompeii snow globe. I was telling someone Thursday night that I was going to make this picture and there was no snow on the ground. And I didn't know the forecast. And the morning of the day I was going to make the picture, this blizzard rolled in. And I was like, why was I going to make the picture before? It's just I don't often have like that kind of serendipity, enter. Everything is pretty carefully planned, but this was a good instance. And again, it could be travel, it could be aspirational, just like being surrounded by Hawaii, with the tiki glasses, and then also the pattern on that bench is this Hawaii fabric. And this one is over there, and I loved sort of the almost fairy tale aspect of the room with the photograph of Castle Neuschwanstein in Germany, sort of like the Disneyland castle hanging in there. Here's another cabin in Maine one where, of course, you're looking at ancient Egypt and the pyramids from Maine. Or your basement. This is, I find all these games that are, have the premise of historical events. So this is a pinball game that is referencing the Apollo-Soyuz cooperation of U.S. And the Soviets at that point in the space race. Darts, and again, sort of the multiple levels of map and globe. And this one is over there, and again, I think it's one I chose to be quite large because I love this Snoopy. I don't know if anybody remembers this game, but this was part of my childhood. Snoopy and the Red Baron. And you roll marbles down through this plane because you're trying to kill the Red Baron. So you have to lift up. One person is shooting the marbles down, and one person has the doghouse and is opening and closing the doghouse, and trying to get the marbles in. It's a fun game. And these sort of souvenir plates. One is John Smith and Pocahontas in the red pattern, and then the other is the New Jersey Turnpike. It's a very important art historical. I learned about the New Jersey Turnpike in my art history class in college.
Geo Washington Bridge, not George Washington, Geo.
Yes. Oh, I should have put that next to George over there. Anyway. And again, looking at ideology and icons. So these are little nesting dolls of communists. And this person grew up having a crush on Yuri Gagarin. So that is a little tiny bust by the bed of Yuri Gagarin. And the picture is the space dogs, Belka and Strelka, from that. So that's like the Soviet space room. And Obama, of course, with all these romance novel covers. So that there's that collection, and then there's the Obama pillow. Jackie O, this person really had a thing for Jackie O and all these Jackie books. And she even dresses like Jackie O in real life. But also, this along with some of these other ones like Statue of Liberty behind me, there's something about like notions of ideal femininity in these, the Statue of Liberty next to, the naked woman on a dolphin. Or all these dresses. This person actually, the homeowner, made these, and they're very period-specific costumes that she makes, but again, with sort of like the 1920s busts of women. And of course, Caesar on a light-up Ionic column, which became the cover of the book.
The column lights from inside?
Yes, it's plastic and it has a light inside. And yes, with the practice golf, of course. And then I have just a few images that are newer. Some of these pictures I took at the same time as I was finishing up the book, and they don't relate to the book. They're still interiors, they're still very narrative, and I'm not totally sure, but like I've been talking about, there's something about the family and being at home with our family. I was just going to show a couple of these, and this is a quote from an Italo Calvino novel, If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. And this is something I read probably early in college and wrote it down then, and I still just see the connection to my work and always what I've been kind of preoccupied by. So he writes, "Your relationship with objects is selective, personal. Only the things you feel yours become yours. And once they are attached to you, marked by your possession, the objects no longer seem to be there by chance. They assume meaning as elements of a discourse, like a memory composed of signals and emblems. Are you possessive? Perhaps there is not enough evidence to tell. For the present, it can be said that you are possessive toward yourself, that you are attached to the signs in which you identify something of yourself, fearing to be lost with them." And there's one more. So I meant to say at the beginning that you could interrupt me and ask questions, but I didn't say that. But I am more than happy to answer questions. Yes?
How did you find the people, get access, et cetera?
That is a very good question. So it ranges like that one I showed you with the canoe coffee table. That's a friend that I'm talking to who kind of knows things I'm interested, and she's like, I just started this house sitting job. Other ones, just as examples, like Caesar. My husband teaches high school and had a student that he got to know well. The student's parents invited us to a holiday party. So I was in their home and was like, I need to come back and photograph there. What's another good one? It ranges like that. So some of them are people I know well, but otherwise it's kind of like a network. And often, I know, like the Horse of Selene, that was, when we went remote for teaching and all our faculty meetings were on Zoom, I got to see a lot of people's houses during faculty meetings. So I saw this colleague's living room, and I asked him, after COVID, if I could come photograph his living room, which didn't end up in the book or in this show. But he said, I have to take you to my neighbor who has this, and it was his neighbor, who had that. So I always say, like, if anyone knows a place, I'm always looking for new places.
Before COVID, there was this organization, I don't know, I haven't heard of it since, but they had, like, I can't remember the name, it was basically Weird Home Tour.
Oh.
I went on, there's an airplane that somebody is living in. Outside of town somewhere, and that was on the tour. There were two. I went in on one tour, had a coffee table with little sambos holding it up.
Well, yeah. Well, so maybe I need to do a residency. Yeah.
They're just here in Portland.
Right.
Amazing.
I can imagine, yeah.
Yeah, so this came to mind watching this.
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout. Yeah.
Yeah, I like these very much, but they also make me uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable because these weren't ever expected, if indeed these are, you talked about sort of animated world a little bit, a magical realism or something, but these scenes weren't ever intended to be photographed. And these are such a private expression of a family's whatever. And I really feel like now, did you get permission? And I don't mean from the owner, I mean from the place. I mean, did you get permission from the images to take these images? Yeah.
I didn't get permission from
It's so personal to me. There's a personalness, and I'm almost on the verge of sometimes giggling or laughing.
Yeah.
And then it is, well, hold it, that's not what they're not there for my giggle here. They're there for something else, and it's just, there's just an awful lot going on with the relationship of the images. And I do ask, sort of to get a conversation, is did you get permission to take these pictures in that way? Because now it becomes a critical element. And
Yeah.
start to pass judgment on the people who do it. It's just very, out here, it's confusing. As images, I like them a lot, but there's a lot of questions about this.
Yeah, and this is something I talk about a lot, and certainly comes up, with the homeowners. And people have asked me, are you making fun of these places? And I am not. I don't feel, I love these places. I love the color and pattern. I love the humor. Some of these are in my own house. Uneasy, yes, and that's something as a photographer that I'm probably ramping up a little bit, with my lighting, I will move things around to put objects in conversation with each other. But I always give the homeowner a print that I make in their house, and I have never, ever had somebody unhappy or feel like I was making fun of them, so that's important to me. I mean, if they did feel that way, I wouldn't use it. And they know what I'm up to. I mean, even if it's someone I don't know well, I send them my website, I talk to them about what the project is. So, but I do, I talk about how some of them are unexamined. So like I said, my friend, who had the Santa Maria lamps, it was her parents' house, and she just never saw it, right? And then so I think that, she was really happy to see it through my eyes and to be like, oh yeah, why did they have those? Yeah. But the humor is important to me. I mean,
it also sounds like you also give meaning to the family. The family had no meaning for some of this, and just by you framing your photographs, it condensed it for them as well, it seems.
Sometimes. Yeah, that happens sometimes.
Wow. Thanks.
Yeah.
Might mesh the two things, but how often do you get a refusal? Like you're saying, a friend says, oh, I think you should photograph that, and then they look at you and they're like, I don't know if I feel comfortable.
That's a really interesting question. I have one reaction I get that's along those lines, but is not a refusal, is, why do you want to my house isn't interesting. Like people don't see what I might see in it. I mean, and that goes to your question earlier. I'm trying to think. The only time I can think that someone refused me, it was a friend of a friend of a friend, and the person was an artist, and they considered their house their art, so they didn't want me documenting it as my art. So, they had cool stuff, and they had put it together, and they were like, yeah, like, this is mine, you know. So that made sense to me. But I think that's like the only time. Yeah.
What kind of lighting do you use? Because it all has a kind of a surreal, it doesn't look like natural light in a home when you go to a home.
Yeah, so I do have a light kit and I bring them. I mean, I started shooting film, large format film, and they were very long exposures, so I needed to add light. And I still bring that light kit, but I have found, especially in most of this work, it is lights, either lights in the image that you know, I arrange, you know, I pick and choose what lights are on, and sometimes I'll fill in shadows with my own lights, but a lot of it I was finding is actually more dramatic, you know, with the windows if I wait till it's darker outside, and then the artificial light inside kind of glows in a different way. But yeah, it varies a little bit. Yeah.
Curious about your process of seeing, like when you enter these homes, do you do like a reconnaissance mission tour, take notes, you know, like what does your process look like?
So it depends on where it is and what my relationship to the person is. My preference is to go once without my camera and lights and have them give me a tour and think about it. I take pictures on my phone to kind of think about later and think about what room and what wall and what I might want to move. And then make a date to go back. Sometimes a place is too far away to do that, or I don't want to intrude more than I need to. So plenty of times I show up and just try to make a picture right then and there. Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of your talk that your images are devoid of people. Are there other types of photography that you practice besides what we see here today?
No. I think that's part of like the beginning of my slideshow was like, this has kind of been something I've been obsessed with for a really long time. I mean, yeah. I just love being able to tell the stories through these. And you know, they're a little bit like a film set or narrative in that way. Yeah.
Just curious, you just mentioned that you would sort of patrol the home, do some reconnaissance, and use your iPhone to take pictures. Is that a practice that you use in your overall practice of taking pictures with your iPhone of places that you will return to? And is this, it just seems to be such a natural way of doing this kind of work once you hear it. And is this a more common, I guess, because you're in school too and you teach using the iPhone in that way as a sort of a scouting report for other work?
Yeah, I mean, it has become that for me. I mean, I started, you know, some of the earlier pictures in my first book were before I ever had an iPhone. And so I didn't do that. And I didn't have the same process. There wasn't an equivalent to that. I sketched a lot more. But I do love having the iPhone because I can just snap away. And sometimes I even like look back and I'm like, you know, I'm not really thinking about composition when I'm shooting with the phone, but I'm like, oh, that actually is a really good composition. I should do that, you know, or oh, that light really looked cool, like that I didn't even notice, you know. So it has become an important part of my process. Yeah. Even when I'm shooting, if I'm not sure how the lighting is going to look, you know, on the spot, I'll use the phone just to check out lighting and things too. Well, thanks for listening.